Okay, there we go. And the next slide will show you some of the topics that Cheryl and I are going to talk about. The first one is to talk about tomatoes. There are many people that have tomatoes on their vines and they're wondering what to do about them. If you still have tomatoes, you can cover that plant with some plastic that will protect it from some of our hard late season rains and also our cooler temperatures. But if you're wanting to harvest some of those plants, what you can do is take some of the green tomatoes, the larger green tomatoes that you still have on your vine, and you can put them, if you want them to ripen right away, you would put them inside your home in a dark place in temperature somewhere between 65 and 70 degrees. If you want those green tomatoes to last for months before you get to eat them, then what you do then is to put them in a cooler temperature, somewhere between 50 and 60 degrees. And that would be in an unheated basement, or maybe an insulated garage or an enclosed porch. And when you put them down, you want to cover them up with some newspaper or something like that and make sure that they're not touching, so that if one rots, to be able to take that one out and the rest of them will be fine. But I have another thing to say. And Cheryl, I need you to answer this question. I still have some carrots in my garden and other gardeners do too. So what should we do about those carrots now?
Thanks, Jane. Well, great question. If you have root crops like carrots or beets, you can either harvest them now or let them overwinter in the ground. Cover your carrots and beets and even turnips with 1 to 2 inches of sawdust. Your onions and leeks with several inches of dry leaves, or you can even protect them with a row cover. Swiss chard, kale, and collard generally survive the winter without any protection. And now you're going to feel pretty smart because you can harvest vegetables, fresh vegetables from your garden all winter long. But Jane, I'm wondering, can I still plant my fall and winter vegetable garden?
That's a great question. We have received several questions about that. Unfortunately, by October, it's a little late to start planting your fall and winter crops, except for one crop, which is garlic. Now is the perfect time to plant your garlic. The garlic roots will develop in the fall and winter, and then by early spring, they can support the rapid growth that's necessary to form those large bulbs underneath. There are several different types of garlic to choose from that you'll be able to find in some of the garden stores right now that will be available for you to purchase. But before you plant your garlic, you're going to need to add lime to enrich the soil if you haven't done so recently, and then work in a couple tablespoons of either 5-10-10 fertilizer or some bone meal or some fish meal. The link that you see on this page is from our garlic expert. He is a retired extension agent. His name is Chip Buble, and he is the garlic expert all through the country. So if you want a lot more information on garlic, please do see his site. And Cheryl, here's another question that we received. This person wants to know what to do with all her leftover dead vegetables that she has lying in her garden.
Good question. We used to be told to remove all dead vegetable crops at the end of the season. And certainly if you have any disease or insect problems, get rid of that debris. You don't want it lingering in your garden bed. And it's still a good plan, but some gardeners now decide to leave some of that dead material on top as kind of a mulch that they can later it will break down, and over time in the spring when you're ready, you can kind of feed the microbes with all that great material, and you'll have happier, healthier vegetables as a result. And that saves just cutting it down or removing it and throwing it all away. Now, the next thing you do need, as Sherry said in her great presentation on soils, was that you need to consider what to do with your garden plot if you're not growing winter vegetables. So there are a couple things you can do. One is to plant a cover crop. Cover crops, as Sherry said, are a great carbon sequestration strategy. The roots and shoots of cover crops feed bacteria, fungi, earthworms, and other soil organisms, which increases the soil carbon level over time. These hardworking plants can add organic matter and aerate the soil. They also protect the garden from compaction caused by our rain, suppress the weeds, add nitrogen, reduce erosion, and help to control underground diseases. There are several types of cover crops that can be planted to grow through the winter. And as Sherry said, it is getting late in the season. They have to germinate and we have to have warm enough weather. But vetch is one, crimson clover is one, fava beans. There are lots of others. And of course, you can work those into the soil in the spring. If you don't want to plant a cover crop, the soil should be protected with an organic material like leaves, straw, or compost. You can use black plastic or coffee sacks to protect from winter rains and suppress weeds. And those strategies work for garden beds as well as raised beds. Jane, a lot of people keep asking if they shouldn't just wholesale apply lime to their vegetable garden. Is that a good thing to do?
Well, you really need to test your soil to find out what the pH is. Usually we never have, if you're talking about your vegetable garden, you usually don't have to add lime every year because the other organic matter that you use in your garden will help keep the pH what you want it to be. But if you want to, fall is actually the best time to test your soil pH. Most vegetables need a pH somewhere between 6 and 7. And if you find that your pH is low, that is when you're going to add lime at this time of year. It's very beneficial because it takes several months for the pH to actually raise the acidity and raise the alkalinity. Oh, okay, to raise the soil pH. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, it doesn't happen really quick, so it's going to take a little bit of time. One thing, though, that I need to mention is that if you are planning on putting potatoes in your garden, potatoes really like a pH a little bit lower than most other vegetables, between 5 and 5.5. If the pH is too high around vegetable plants, you'll get a lot of scabbing on your potatoes and they won't be able to store through the winter time. So if you are going to plant potatoes, make sure that you don't raise the soil pH too high in that area. Now, I figured out what to do with my soil pH, Cheryl. My big problem is, what am I going to do about the slugs?
Oh, good question. This is something we all struggle with. As you're cleaning up your vegetable garden, be sure to look for any slugs or snails that lurk behind and under the debris. That it is a problem if you leave debris on. So search through there. Make sure you get any slugs or slug eggs out of there. Slugs can lay 20 to 100 eggs several times a year, depending on the type of slug it is. So anything that you can dispatch now at this time is a win-win for springtime. It'll save you a lot of trouble in the coming spring. And that's it for us this week. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out our links to the publications